The war in Ukraine has amplified the global conversation about energy security. It has also highlighted the role that liquid natural gas plays, not only as part of that stability, but as a transition fuel as well. Norway-based Höegh LNG is a leading worldwide provider of floating LNG terminals, so it's very well placed to provide insight on this issue. I'm Rosanna Lockwood and I'm in Davos, where I sat down with some of the management team. It's time to talk LNG with Höegh LNG. President CEO Erik Nyheim, wonderful to have you here. Chairman Morten Höegh, thank you both so much for joining us here in beautiful Davos, Switzerland.
Great to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about Höegh LNG then, a major sort of institutional Norwegian company. But for those that may not be so familiar with it, Morten, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what it is, the company.
Sure.
Does.
So the Höegh family are pioneers. My grandfather Leif started the shipping company in 1927 to operate one of Norway's first oil tankers. In 1973, we took delivery of our first LNG carrier, and in 2006, we entered the floating LNG regas business. At the time, LNG production and volumes were growing rapidly, but a number of customers didn't have the infrastructure to land and regasify the commodity. And we spotted an opportunity and a niche to do that on board vessels rather than in land-based terminals. So in 2009, we took delivery of the first two floating regas and storage units for the French company DDF Suez, which is now part of Total Energies. And since then, we have become the global leading owner and operator of FSRUs today with a fleet of 10 vessels on the water.
Very interesting, Morten, to hear about Höegh LNG and the history of the company. Let's talk about the world in which it now operates, which is very high pressured from an energy perspective. Currently at the moment, on a macro scale, of course, the Ukraine war, already mentioned, has put LNG, liquid natural gas, for the first time at the forefront of the minds of members of the public as well. But let's talk about that global narrative about energy security. Erik, how has it shifted in the last year?
The war in Ukraine is the tragic, heartbreaking backdrop to this situation, which is really impacting whole Europe in terms of causing an energy crisis. And because of the sanctions that have been put on Russia, the repercussions and the blowing up of the pipelines, etc., the energy crisis is very much about natural gas. And the only way to replace the large volumes of Russian gas that have been imported into Europe is really to start importing liquified natural gas, LNG. Fortunately, some European countries have had LNG infrastructure in place, typically large LNG terminals, but very few floating terminals. What several countries are seeing as the solution, including Germany, which is the most exposed because they've been relying on pipeline gas from Norway and Russia, is really using floating terminals, and they're fantastic assets for several reasons. First of all, they're very quick to be deployed. In the case of Germany, within months. They're extremely flexible. They can be relocated to different places. They can be stopped when there's no longer use for them, and they can even be traded as LNG carriers in seasonality. And in addition to that, we think they're low cost as well. We estimate 40–50% lower cost than land-based terminals. And moreover, they don't require much land footprint, so they're also more environmentally friendly in that regard.
So we've talked in some detail now about the energy crisis, the role that LNG is playing in providing Europe, especially but everywhere in the world, with a more secure supply of energy. But of course, before February 2022 and the invasion of Ukraine, the war, most energy companies were tackling with the issue of a transition to a clean supply of energy. Talk to me about Höegh LNG and what you have been doing in that sense.
Yeah, so we are thinking a lot about it, and we are sort of active on two arenas. First of all, natural gas and LNG is the most efficient and cleanest form of hydrocarbons. And while the world is transitioning and scaling up renewable capacity, you need an alternative, you need a backup, and natural gas is there as the transition fuel. So we are very constructive on the prospects for LNG, both in terms of how volumes will develop, but also the importance of LNG as that transition fuel. Secondly, clean energy solutions and sort of new zero carbon energy carriers will also require significant infrastructure for storage, for transportation, for imports. And marine infrastructure will be required, and we believe that with our experience and competence, basically our people, we have a role to play to develop those new infrastructure solutions. And we are now actively in dialogues both with existing customers and new potential partners to develop and eventually deploy clean energy infrastructure solutions.
So it's interesting to hear it from the Höegh LNG side and what the company is doing. Let's talk about it from, if we can call it the client side, but the government side. Eric, the stakeholders in this, they're battling with a lot at the moment, securing a stable energy supply, ensuring that it's clean to meet UN sustainability goals on a governmental level as well, but also keeping it at affordable prices as well. They're thinking about members of the public and energy prices. Tell me a little bit about what you've witnessed there.
This is part of the energy trilemma that governance needs to balance, getting access to energy, which we discussed, energy security, making sure the energy transition happens, and at the same time making energy affordable. And over the last months, we've seen gas prices and electricity prices soaring. So this is definitely a short-term focus that also needs to be addressed. And we think floating terminals is part of that solution as well. The best thing you can do is make sure that there is capacity to import sufficient volumes so that you can also get the prices down on the commodities. And if you look at the cost of the infrastructure, we assess that our floating terminals is only about 2% of the total cost of landing LNG. Most of the cost is related to molecules. So we think it makes good sense to invest in good capacity to also then make sure enough volumes are imported.
Let's understand a little bit about how Höegh LNG has been sort of playing a role in this. You've given me examples about how floating terminals are key to providing energy security and stability. Give us some concrete examples. Where are your floating terminals at the moment? What are they doing?
Höegh LNG has been providing floating terminals and energy security for a number of years. And a great example and phenomenal success story is Lithuania. So back in 2012, the then president and government had the foresight to see that they could no longer rely on Russian gas. So they decided to launch a tender. And since 2014, our vessel, which was named Independence, was operational. And for those that were present, the day it was arriving in Lithuania, people were cheering, waving flags, and really celebrating as an Independence Day. And today, Lithuania is fully energy independent, and they're also providing gas to neighboring countries such as Poland and Latvia. And today, Germany is a bit in the same situation. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, in his New Year's speech, said that floating terminals and LNG terminals is really what will make Germany permanently energy independent. Together with our partners, Total, RWE, Uniper, Deutsche Regas, we are delivering the 3 first LNG terminals into Germany. The first one was opened just before Christmas by Olaf Scholz and is now operational, so it's providing gas, feeding gas into the German gas grid line. The other 2 terminals will open within a matter of weeks. Höegh Gannet is the vessel which will be based in Brunsbüttel, and Neptune in Lubmin. So combined, these will have a capacity of about 20 billion cubic meters, or about a third of what Germany imported from Russia in 2021. And moreover, we think there's need for more assets, so we're working together with partners to provide that. The floating terminal fleet globally is really fully engaged, so what we're looking into now is do conversions to provide more capacity into the market.
Wonderful. It's been great learning about Höegh LNG, the trilemma that you guys are operating in, of course, as well, and plenty of challenges ahead, but it sounds like you're well placed to deliver. So we'll be tracking your movements as a company very closely. Morten Höegh, Erik Nøheim, thank you very much for joining us here in Davos, Switzerland. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you for having us.